Hey guys, Mr. P. In this video we're going to talk about carbon and its role in helping to shape all of the carbon compounds we see throughout the biology syllabus and the biological world. Those four main carbon compounds that you're going to hopefully become very used to seeing in this class are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. We're going to have separate videos that cover all four of those types of carbon compounds. However, in this video, we're going to cover carbon and its role in helping to shape those compounds. So this video is going to cover objective B111, which is chemical properties of a carbon atom, allowing for the formation of diverse compounds upon which life is based. Again, the diversity of those carbon compounds are, like I said, carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. Students should understand the nature of a covalent bond. Students should also understand that a carbon atom can form up to 4 single bonds or a combination of single and double bonds with other carbon atoms or atoms of other non-metallic elements. Include among the diversity of carbon compounds examples of molecules with branched or unbranched chains and single or multiple rings. So this video is going to cover carbon at the atomic level, its ability to produce single and double bonds with other carbon atoms and other non-carbon elements. And we're going to cover how it makes and why it makes branched chains and single or multiple rings. So carbon is fundamental in producing the organic chemistry that life is built on because carbon can produce so many single and double bonds. And because of those bonds, it can produce chains and rings, which allows for a very diverse set of compounds that are repeated throughout the biology syllabus. It is also important as a nature of science piece that you understand the scientific conversions are based on the international agreement SI metric unit prefixes, and that is kilo, centi, milli, micro, and nano. So we will cover those at the end. So what is a covalent bond? We just said in the content statement that carbon is really good at making covalent bonds. And so we have to understand what a covalent bond is before we can understand why they're made and why it's so important. And so a covalent bond is when an electron is shared between two different atoms. And so if we look at this particular diagram, we have atom A and we have atom B. It doesn't matter that atom A is a nonmetal and atom B is a nonmetal or metalloid. That is irrelevant in this particular situation. But you have to understand the idea of valence electrons. We know from our time in chemistry that all atoms want to have a full outer electron orbital. And so we know that also the majority of atoms want to have 8 valence electrons in this outer energy level or this outer orbital. And so this atom is missing 1 electron to be stable or full. And this one has 7, and so it's missing 1 as well. Both of these need an additional electron to fill that outer energy level or that outer orbital. And so the easiest way to accommodate both atoms is to share a pair of electrons. And so this electron is kind of sharing in this spot, and this electron is kind of sharing in this spot. And you'll notice that when they snap together, while sharing that pair of electrons, it actually creates 8 electrons for atom A and 8 electrons in that outer orbital for atom B. This is a covalent bond. The pair of electrons is being shared and therefore fills both outer energy orbitals for both atoms. And this is how molecules begin to form. When we start sharing electrons, we can then start producing single bonds, double bonds, and triple bonds. Notice that everything in these particular molecules are not all carbon-based. This is a molecule of water, H2O, 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogens. This molecule happens to have a carbon. That would be carbon dioxide, CO2. And this is a molecule of nitrogen, which is just N2, 2 molecules of nitrogen. We could also have a molecule O2, which would just be 2 molecules of oxygen, which would be sharing electrons as well. But single bonds is when 1 pair of electrons is shared. So that would be a single bond between the oxygen and hydrogens in this case. We can also produce a double bond because carbon has 4 electrons in its outer energy orbital and it needs a total of 8. That means carbon has a total of 4 bond sites, if you will. that it can use or that it needs to use in order for the carbon to be completely filled in that outer energy level. If it forms a double bond with this oxygen and a double bond with this oxygen, it now has 8 total electrons in that outer energy orbital, and carbon is full. Oxygen needs 2 because it has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 electrons of its own. It needs 2, so it will share 2 with carbon. It forms 8 for this oxygen, and this oxygen is the same atom, so it needs 2. If it shares 2 with carbon, it produces 8 total in that outer energy level for this oxygen, and all of a sudden, because of 2 double bonds, all 3 atoms in this particular molecule would be stable as well. And then triple bonds in some atoms can form when 3 pairs of electrons are shared. That forms 3 covalent bonds between nitrogen atoms in this case, producing that N2 molecule. That would be a situation in which 6 electrons are shared. So we can share 2 electrons for a single covalent bond, we can share 4 electrons for a double covalent bond, and we can share 6 electrons for a triple covalent bond. Why is carbon so influential and such a necessity for creating all of the organic chemistry we've become accustomed to seeing within life? Most notably, when we look at a carbon atom, we look at this outer energy level, and we already said that all or most atoms want to have 8 total electrons in this outer energy orbital. And so carbon, you'll notice, is missing a total of 4 electrons, which means it can make up to 4 bonds with other metal or non-metal atoms. And when we begin to add other atoms to carbon, we begin to make carbon-based molecules, which we can see in these examples. So CO would be carbon monoxide. That would be a carbon triple bonded to an oxygen. We also have carbon dioxide, which is a waste gas in cellular respiration, which we will learn a lot about in this class, is CO2, so that's a carbon double bonded to 2 different oxygens. And then we have water, which again isn't a carbon-based molecule, but it is one of those molecules that is fundamental to life as well. Now, we also said in the content statement that carbon begins to make branched and unbranched chains and rings. And so when we put a single carbon with 4 hydrogens, remember that carbon has 4 valence electrons and it needs 4 additional electrons to fill that outer energy orbital. If we add 4 hydrogens that each share a single electron with the carbon, we fill that outer energy orbital for carbon, and because hydrogen only has 1 electron orbital, it only needs 1 additional electron, we fill all of these atoms, and that creates a CH4 molecule, which is known as methane. If we take that 4th hydrogen off and we add another CH3 to a CH3, now we create that 4th bond for this carbon with another carbon. This carbon's 4th bond is with that carbon, and we create this single bond between 2 carbons, again filling the outer energy levels with hydrogen. We call this saturating carbon with hydrogen. If you do that again, you start to see that we are creating what is called a carbon chain, and that's moving from methane to ethane to propane. And if we continue that pattern, we get to a structure that looks like this, which is CH2 repeating. Notice CH2, 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 all the way to the terminal carbon, which is known as a CH3. So that would be the terminal. And notice that every single one of these carbons, which is a chain of carbons because it's a one-way chain, is completely saturated with hydrogens. This is the structure for a saturated fatty acid, which we will get to in later lectures as well. However, because carbon wants to make multiple bonds, if we pull these hydrogens off and form double bonds between the carbon, notice we still have 4 bonds to every carbon. Okay? If it's a saturated carbon, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 carbon bound to 2 carbons and 2 hydrogens. But if we pull these hydrogens off, we have to form this double bond between carbons. Notice we still have 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds to this carbon, and 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds to this carbon. We've removed some of these hydrogens, so we can say that it's unsaturated. We begin to unsaturate this fatty acid. This allows it to be a lot more flexible. It's a lot less rigid. Again, we will talk about that in more detail in a later fatty acid video. But for now, it's important for you to understand that carbon is the backbone that makes these small inorganic compounds all the way to larger chains of organic compounds. But they can also form what we call rings. So these would be called chains. These molecules down here, we would refer to them as rings. Notice that it's a ring because it's not a chain like these are. It actually has a start and stop, and the start and stop is the same carbon. Carbon bound to 2 hydrogens and 2 carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds. 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds. 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds, and so forth. We get a molecule called cyclopentane, cyclohexane, benzene, and pyridine. All of these are molecules that are made with carbon. And notice as we start adding carbons, we get from a pentane, which is a 5-carbon molecule, to a hexane, which is a 6-carbon molecule. Again, both of these are completely saturated with hydrogens. If we start pulling some of those hydrogens off and creating double bonds, because we know from the previous slide that carbon can make single, double, and triple bonds, we start making these double bonds and it creates a different molecule. In this example, benzene. And then we start adding additional atom types, not just carbon and hydrogen in this case. We add in nitrogen and we get a pyridine. These are just basic examples of the organic compounds that can be made with carbon because carbon is so reactive and can form so many different numbers of bonds and bonds with different atoms. So when we look at this particular structure, this is what we would call an amino acid. Amino acid is an organic monomer that makes up, when repeated multiple times, a polymer known as a protein. Water molecule, carbon dioxide, amino acid. Carbon also helps form a nucleotide, which is the monomer for nucleic acid. That happens to be the monomer for DNA and RNA. Amino acid, this helps make the polymer protein. And when we look at these different elements, hydrogen can form a single covalent bond, oxygen can form 2, nitrogen can form 3, carbon can form 4, and then phosphorus can form 5. When you put all of these molecules together, you can create so many different organic compounds and molecules, both chain and rings, that are important to life and completely fundamental and vital to establishing the organization we see in biology today. Some of the functional groups in biomolecules or organic chemistry that you'll see a lot, hydroxyl group is an OH molecule that we add to a lot of different organic compounds in biology. Carboxyl group, COOH. You'll notice that this is a carboxyl group, that's a COOH group. An amino group, this is an amino group, NH2. Okay, NH2 is an amino group. Sometimes you'll see a sulfhydryl. Sometimes you'll see a phosphate group. This is a phosphate group, PO4. Carbonyl group, COH, and a CO group. Those can be found throughout biology as well. These are some common functional groups you'll see repeated a lot in biomolecules that we see throughout the biology syllabus. And like I said at the beginning of the video, there are different categories of organic compounds that you'll see throughout biology, most notably the carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. We will have full videos on every single one of these categories. And every single one of these categories has different subcategories. So carbohydrates can be found in monosaccharide, disaccharide, or polysaccharide varieties. Lipids can be found in triglycerides, phospholipids, and steroids. And nucleic acids can be found within RNA and DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, RNA is ribonucleic acid, as well as adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is the energy currency or the energy molecule found in prokaryote and eukaryote cell biology. Again, we will cover all of these in a lot more detail. This is just an example of different categories and subcategories. You will see every single one of these are carbon-based. Every single one of these are going to have some of those functional groups like amino groups and carboxyl groups and hydroxyl groups. That's it for this particular video. If you learned something, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We'll see ya.